force levels are more or less the same, and from our side they have been enhanced. The threat assessment and internal deliberations that we have carried out from time to time have resulted in some reorganization and realignment of forces in keeping with the Army's mandate of ensuring our territorial integrity. And this also caters for the major augmentation that has taken place in the PLA's forces and their infrastructure. While we will continue to deal with the PLA in a firm and resolute manner, necessary safeguards are in place to take care of any contingency. Upgradation and development of infrastructure along the northern borders is also being carried out in a holistic and comprehensive manner. This includes roads, tunnels, all-weather connectivity, strategic railway lines, additional bridges across the Brahmaputra, storage facilities for fuel, oil, lubricants, supplies. So it is an all-round holistic development. Side by side, major efforts have also been undertaken to see what all dual-use infrastructure is there which can be made use of, which is available in the civil domain. On the western front, along the line of control, after a heightened situation for a long period, the DGMO's understanding in February last year was aimed at achieving a mutually beneficial and sustainable peace. Resultantly, the situation has seen a marked improvement. But notwithstanding that, there is an increase in concentration of terrorists in various launch pads, and there have been repeated attempts at infiltration across the LC. And needless to say, this once again exposes the nefarious designs of our western neighbor. But we on our part have resolved to show zero tolerance for terror, and we have committed ourselves to extract dire costs should that be forced upon us. In Jammu and Kashmir, the whole of government approach has led to a progressive improvement in the security situation. There have been efforts to give an indigenous hue to terrorism by setting up a facade of proxy terror tanzeems, but these attempts have failed miserably and have not got any public support. Various other inimical elements re-energized their attempts at disrupting peace in the valley, mainly by trying to target minorities, non-locals, migrant labor, and so on. However, this also has not succeeded very much, and we have been able to counter these challenges also. In the northeast, the overall security situation is under control. A robust security posture has significantly curtailed the operation space for terrorists. And in keeping with the improved situation, there has been a graduated de-induction of army units where the situation has improved and they have now free to concentrate on their primary task. On the India-Myanmar border, this is an important facet of our security calculus. Due impetus is being given to the border guarding role by the Assam Rifles. And here we do intend to progressively increase the number of Assam Rifle battalions deployed for border guarding of this very important India-Myanmar border. In the northeast again, the regrettable incident which happened in Oting in Nagaland on 4th of December is being thoroughly investigated. We remain committed to the security of our countrymen even during the conduct of operations. We have SOPs that encapsulate our operational experience, which have been refined over a period of time, and appropriate action will be taken and corrective measures instituted to further refine these, based, of course, on the outcome of the investigations. Overall, in line with our operational realities, we have undertaken reorganization and rebalancing of our forces. Reorientation of additional forces to the northern borders has been carried out, while retaining our capability for punitive strikes on the Western Front. Force restructuring, which is a very important facet for enhanced operational effectiveness and resultant structural optimization through the creation of integrated battle groups, is proceeding well. The IBGization, if I may call it that, of select formations along the western and northern borders will soon come to fruition. In line with our collective efforts towards greater synergy and integration for the establishment of Theatre Command, we on our part are carrying out our deliberations in consultation with the other two services, in line and keeping in mind the timelines which have been given to us by headquarter IDS. We, that is the Indian Army, stand fully committed to jointness and synergy. There has also been a sustained and coordinated effort towards capability enhancement. The crisis on the northern borders gave us an opportunity to fast-track our infrastructure development and undertake doctrinal reviews and make up various operational voids which had been existing through emergency and fast-track procurements. While doing all this, the Indian Army, we are committed to the Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan, and we have prioritized our procurements so that maximum of this should go to the Indian industry. And at the same time, we are also hand-holding numerous indigenization projects, right from the design and development stage, right to the trials and their induction into the Army. For example, in the current financial year, out of the 20 AONs which were granted, 19 are in the Buy Indian category. We have also taken very significant steps on leveraging artificial intelligence, 5G, quantum technology to gain an edge over our likely adversaries and for better management of forces. The Indian Army's participation, of course, in various peacekeeping operations worldwide has ensured peace in various parts of the world and has helped us as a nation to carve a niche for ourselves in UN affairs. And as of now, we have more than 5,300 personnel deployed in 8 UN missions in various parts of the globe. Side by side, there has also been a lot of considerable, I would say, increase in the defense cooperation activities that we have been undertaking with our friendly foreign countries. And owing to our high standards of training, professional expertise, and the reliable defense technology that we have, more and more foreign countries have shown interest in engaging with us. And when required, we have walked that extra mile to accommodate the requests, especially from our immediate neighbors. We have also undertaken joint HADR exercises to synergize our efforts and resources. We recently concluded the PANEX 21 exercise for BIMSTEC countries in December 2021 at Pune. And earlier, last year, in November, we had the exercise Konkan Shakti with the United Kingdom. And both these exercises were against the backdrop of a pandemic scenario. As far as our men are concerned, there has been a concerted effort in the field of human resource management, including meeting the aspirations of women officers. And in order to provide equal opportunities to them, not only have they been granted permanent commission in line with their main counterparts, but they can also aspire to attain higher ranks within the armed forces, and with that, shoulder higher responsibilities also. And the permanent commission, grant of permanent commission to the officers of the junior batches, that process is also underway, as are the preparations to induct women cadets into the National Defense Academy from June 2022. As I mentioned earlier, the first batch of women soldiers who we had taken in the Corps of Military Police have not only finished the training, but have also joined the units and are performing exceedingly well. All these are major developments towards women empowerment in the army. There has also been a special focus on the welfare of our veterans and families, more so at the time of the pandemic. Our outreach programs and campaigns to veterans and Veer Naris, especially those who were in distant parts of the country, far-flung corners, and are reaching out to them, ensured a settlement of a large number of their problems. And we shall continue, of course, to build on these efforts. Towards the end, I would like to acknowledge the support of the media to the Indian Army. You have ventured into challenging areas, often at great risk to your own lives, to bring the narrations and valor and tales of valor and sacrifice of our soldiers to the nation. Your reports from active operational areas have created better awareness among the citizens of our country. And these reports, I dare say, and from the feedback which I have received, have invariably led to a feeling of greater respect for the soldiers in uniform. And it is also an acknowledgement of the role that we, the uniform fraternity, play in keeping the nation safe and secure. But more than that, as conscience keepers of the nation, you have also highlighted areas where we need greater focus. And these have been part of the constructive feedback that we have received and which every organization requires to grow and become stronger. And for that, we are all very grateful. And the military and the media both have a significant role to play, along with other pillars of the state, in building a strong nation. And towards that end, I look forward to a very strong and continued partnership between the two of us, the media and the military, in the times to come. With that, I will end my opening remarks, and I am now open to questions.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are extremely grateful to all of you who have logged in and those among you who have forwarded your questions in advance. We have received questions on varied topics, and therefore, for ease of conduct and assimilation, we will take all the questions pertaining to a particular topic or subject together. I will be reading out the questions and also the names of the journalists who have asked a similar question. Then I will request the Chief of the Army Staff to make his response. Let me move on to the questions now. Manish Prasad of India TV asks, how do you see your 2 years as Chief of the Army Staff? What are your
Can
top...
you show me, Manish, there?
What are your top operational as well as administrative priorities for this year? So.
Okay. Yeah, sorry for the interruption. I just wanted to see whether Mr. Manish Prasad was online so that I could see him while responding. But thank you very much for that question, and it's really, 2 years have gone by in a flash, 24 months. When I took over, I was the 28th Chief of the Army, and I had 28 months to go. And already 24 months have gone, and I'm already in the last quarter of my tenure. It's unbelievable how time flies. But yes, the last 2 years have been extremely challenging, not only because of the COVID issue, but also because of the situation on the northern borders. And I dare say that our reaction and response to both these challenges was very robust, and we as an army have acquitted ourselves extremely well. As far as the COVID situation is concerned, I think our response to that, right from force preservation to augmentation of our capabilities, was very timely, and that enabled us to be prepared when the situation so demanded to be firm and have the required numbers to guard our borders, both the northern and western borders, and that did help to deal with the situation in eastern Ladakh as it developed. But as I said, I think that is a very important, these two things I would say is what occupied us and me personally for the last 2 years. However, I do feel that I could have done much more had the COVID thing not been there, because of the curtailment on movements and on the curtailment of various activities. I was not able to go out as much as I would have liked to the forward areas, to meet the men, to take part in various exercises with troops and be with them at the cutting edge, at the places where they were doing their jobs. But as I said, that's part of the game and the challenges which come up from time to time. But I think we have been able to meet these twin challenges of COVID and Eastern Ladakh, and yet at the same time also meet the challenge on the Western Front of proxy war. So the last 2 years, I think, we have acquitted ourselves very well as an organization and done whatever has been expected of us as an army to safeguard the interests of the nation.
We now have a set of questions on the situations along the northern borders and China. The first question on the topic is on our preparedness along the northern borders, and this is by Ajit Dubey of Asian News International. A similar question has also been asked by Madhurendra Kumar of News Nation and Vedika Sood of CNN International. The question is, what is the present situation on the northern borders? A lot of new equipment has been inducted into the Eastern Ladakh sector, while a lot of new purchases have also been made. Can you tell us how has the Indian Army emerged as a better prepared force through this conflict?
Well, I have been speaking to most of you all on the situation in Eastern Ladakh, how it developed and in what ways we have been dealing with it. And I think it is very clear that the Army's response to the Chinese attempts to unilaterally change the status quo were very robust, and we were able to thwart this design. But as I mentioned earlier, this also gave us an opportunity to review our operational plans, and based on that, a lot of activities were undertaken to augment our capabilities, not only in Eastern Ladakh, but all along the northern front. We were not just focusing ourselves on one side, but we took a very holistic view of the entire northern front. And to that end, it is not only augmentation of forces, but augmentation of infrastructure, weapons, equipment. And I dare say that in the last year and a half, our capabilities have increased manyfold as far as our northern front is concerned. We have inducted additional troops. We have made various infrastructure and billeting facilities for as many as 25,000 additional troops which had gone into that area. It is not only billeting, but roads, tunnels, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, facilities for storage of ammunition and FOL, additional facilities to cater for any more increments that might take place in times to come. So all of these have been part of the efforts that we have made in the last year or so. And because of all that that we have done, I think we are in a much better position than we were a year and a half ago, and also much better prepared to meet any challenge that is thrown up in the future.
The next question pertains to the present status of the standoff and is asked by Srinjoy Chaudhary of Times Now and Krishan Kaushik of Indian Express. The question is, what is the position on the line of control in the following areas: PP-15, Demchok and Depsan? And what are your expectations of the talks today?
Well, the talks have been ongoing for a long time, and the 14th round of talks are presently underway. As you're aware that it is a good thing that talks are going on. It shows that we can resolve our differences through dialogue, and that is why this mechanism is very important. The fourth and fifth set round of talks resulted in resolving the issue at PP14. Thereafter, a number of other rounds took place, and by the 9th and 10th round, we were able to resolve the issues in the north and south bank of Pangangso, as also the Kailash ranges. And thereafter, with another couple of rounds, that is by the time of the 12th round, we were able to also resolve the issue at PP17. What I'm trying to show is that we have to keep talking to each other. And every time we talk to each other, we understand each other's viewpoints, we understand the perceptions, the differences, and every time we have this dialogue, those differences keep getting narrowed down, and then we reach a consensus and an agreement. And an agreement which is based on mutual and equitable security, and an agreement and our understanding which is acceptable to both sides, which is a win-win. And therefore, a number of rounds of these talks take place. But to expect that every round will have an outcome is also quite unreasonable. Number of rounds would be required to deal with the situation and resolve them one at a time. So in this series of talks that are going on, we are hopeful that we'll be able to resolve the issues at PP17, and once correction at PP15, which is the one which is pending as of now. And once that is done, we will go on to the other issues which predate the current standoff, and we are hopeful that that too will be get resolved from time to time. As far as the current round is concerned, both sides have made their opening remarks, and after a short break, they have now got down to discussing the specific agendas for the meeting, but I do not have any update on that as yet. But as I mentioned, what is important is that we are talking to each other, and during these talks, it is not only at the military level, but it has been a whole of nation effort. Talks have happened at the political level between respective defense and foreign ministers. Talks have happened at the diplomatic level, and of course, they are happening at the military level too. So as a part of this, we have been able to resolve most of the outstanding issues, and I'm quite confident that going ahead in the future, we will be able to resolve all the other issues also.
The next question, sir, pertains to the impact of Chinese boundary law on the military situation. It's been asked by Shailesh Kumar from National Defense, Manas Bhuyam from PTI, and Anju Nirvan from Republic Bharat. Question is, a new Chinese border law has come into force from 1st January. How would this new law affect resolution of the ongoing India-China military standoff in your view? Sir, do you see the new law adding more complexity and contribute to worsen the military situation along the India-China border rather than resolving the situation?
No. As far as this new border law is concerned, I think our MEA has made it abundantly clear that this law will have no bearing on our bilateral relations, and that we do not accept it as such. We have many other agreements and protocols which predate this new law which they have passed, and any law as such which does not have which is not binding on other countries and which is not legally tenable and is not in keeping with the agreements that we have had in the past, obviously cannot be binding on us. As far as the military ramifications are concerned, we are still looking into that aspect. But should there be any military ramification and should there be any likely fallout in the military domain, as I've said, that with whatever steps we have taken, and the rebalancings that we have carried out, any such fallout, I think we are more than adequately prepared to deal with it.
Question now pertains to possibility of permanent deployment in Eastern Ladakh. And the journalists who have asked this are Mayank Singh from New Indian Express, Rajat Pandit from Times of India, and Poonam Pandey from Navbharat Times. The question is, with China building permanent infrastructure along Eastern Ladakh, is a permanent deployment in their mind? If not, when do you think the de-escalation will take place?
I think it is quite clear, and I think the MEA also made reference to it when they said that the amassing of large forces by the Chinese in Eastern Ladakh is the root cause of this situation which developed. But now that they are there and they have made a lot of infrastructure, it remains to be seen whether they will permanently station themselves there, garrison themselves there, or whether they would be amenable to some kind of de-induction in times to come. But as far as the situation is concerned, you have to realize that it would have to follow a few well laid out steps. That is, first, the disengagement has to happen from the friction areas. And once that disengagement happens, then we can think of a little bit of de-escalation. So once the friction areas are sorted out and a little bit of confidence has been built up, then we can think of de-escalation. And by that I mean moving back from being bang on the LAC to areas in depth, but remaining within that general area. And once this kind of confidence is built up, then we can think of de-induction, wherein troops can go back to their permanent garrisons and locations. But whatever we decide to do will be based on the principle of mutual and equal security, and that is always going to be our bottom line. But within that, till we reach those steps, we will have to be prepared to stay there for as long as it requires.
The next question is from Snehesh Alex Phillips from the print pertaining to the northern border. He asks, in your first press conference, even before the standoff happened, you had stressed upon the need to rebalance focus from the western neighbor to the northern. Do you think we were wrong in ignoring China, or should I say slow in ramping up our capability against China? With regard to China, do you think we are militarily prepared as of today?
Thank you, Snesh. And actually, I wasn't clairvoyant or anything that I talked about rebalancing to northern borders. It is just that this has been something which has been discussed and was being discussed for a long time. It is not something which happened on the spur of the moment. And in fact, over the years, a lot of force augmentation on the northern borders had already taken place. Just to give you an example, in Sikkim, there only used to be, first there used to be no armor at all. Then there was an independent armored squadron. And then that was further built up to 2 regiments of armor and some more. So force augmentation and little bit of rebalancing to the northern borders was always being carried out, but possibly it was being carried out in smaller numbers at unit level, and it didn't perhaps come into focus. But we have always been cognizant of the dual threat that we face, both on the northern front and the western front, and we have always been reviewing our operational plans. It shows that we are a very dynamic army who keep reviewing our plans and keep making adjustments accordingly. And I think the credit for that goes to everyone, right from the man who's on the front line, who realizes what the situation is and how the dynamics are changing, and the feedback that we keep receiving from the forward troops and the commanders on ground, based on which the overall strategy is formalized at the command and the army headquarters level, and then these redeployments that happen from time to time. So I won't say that it has happened only because of the situation that developed, but this is a very continuous and ongoing process, and these kind of operational reviews based on the changing threat perceptions will continue to happen, and based on that, our deployments also will keep changing.
The next question on the same theme is from Shreya Dondia, CNN News 18, Sudhir Ranjan Sen, Bloomberg, and Pawan Bali of the Asian Age. They ask, could we see an escalation of hostilities in eastern Ladakh or along the LAC? And under what circumstances will that escalation come?
I think we have discussed the northern borders and China quite a bit already. The situation is stable and under control. As I mentioned, that talks are underway, and while the talks are underway, there is always hope that through dialogue we will be able to resolve our differences. What happens and whether a situation escalates or not is very difficult to foretell or to predict. But with whatever we have done so far, we are in a position to meet whatever is thrown at us in the future. And of that, I can assure you very confidently. And war is always, or conflict is always an instrument of last resort. But if resorted to, we will come out victorious.
Another question on China is from Rajiv Ranjan, NDTV India, and Sumit Chaudhary, TV9. They ask, China as a matter of routine has started acting aggressively towards India despite friendly overtures from us, such as they have built a bridge or settled villages in disputed areas. What is your take on this?
I think I mentioned earlier also that infrastructure development is being carried out by them, and this infrastructure is not restricted to only billeting or barracks, but it includes roads, bridges, tunnels, underground storage, and such like. But whatever they are doing, that is being equally matched by us on our side. We are also building roads in border areas, bridges, and in no way are we lagging behind as far as infrastructure development is concerned. I think we are quite evenly matched as far as that is concerned.
Next question is from Vishnu Som from NDTV. He says, satellite imagery indicates that in addition to constructing a village, China has extended and upgraded roads and infrastructure well south of the international boundary in the upper Subansiri district of Arunachal Pradesh. Will the Indian Army physically block further construction of this Chinese road and associated infrastructure if there is an attempt to extend it further south?
I think again on this, the MEA has amply clarified our position. This is arising because the LAC is undemarcated and there are different perceptions on where the border actually lies. And as long as the boundary question remains unresolved, such kind of issues will keep cropping up. And I think the long-term solution, therefore, is to resolve the border question once and for all, rather than every now and then this becoming a point of difference and a pinprick in our bilateral relations. But as far as we are concerned, as the Indian Army, we are very well poised all along our borders, and there is no question that any status quo as it exists today will ever be altered by force.
Shifting focus to the northeast now, there is a question on the security situation post the Mon incident, and this comes from Amrita Datta from CNN News 18, Dinakar Peri from The Hindu, and Pranjali Singh of Sansad TV. They ask, there were plans for a phased withdrawal of troops deployed in CI duties in the northeast so that they can increasingly focus on their core job of war fighting. In view of the latest incidents in the northeast, how is the army viewing the security situation in the region? And what are the army's current plans with respect to maintaining a good strength of army's troops for CI duties in the northeast?
Well, as far as the northeast is concerned, there has been a very marked improvement in the overall security situation in the entire northeast, and that includes Assam, the southern districts of Arunachal, Nagaland, Manipur, and the other states where the army is not deployed, that is Mizoram, Meghalaya, Tripura. And as a result of this improved security situation, we have been able to disengage a number of our formations which were involved in CICT operations in these states, especially in Manipur and in Assam. And they have been left, I won't say left free, but now that they have been disengaged from their CICT role, they are now totally able to focus on their primary task, that is the conventional role. And the fact that we were able to de-induct these forces, 2 divisions worth almost, from CICT roles and tasks, just goes to show how much the security situation has improved. And from wherever they have moved out, the Assam Rifles have taken on that role in these areas. It was very unfortunate, the incident of ambush which happened on the convoy of 46 Assam Rifles. But that one incident is not indicative of a deterioration in the overall situation in the northeast, and we have taken whatever actions were required to deal with that. But yes, the bottom line is that the situation in the northeast has improved manifold.
Next question on the Mon incident inquiry is from Abhishek Bhalla, India Today TV. He says, will the army personnel get any protection under AFSPA in the Nagaland killings of civilians, and what is the status of the inquiry in the incident?
Well, I would like to say that right at the outset that the incident which happened at Oting in Nagaland on the 4th of December is highly regrettable. In the aftermath of the incident, the Eastern Command was quick in ordering an inquiry, which is headed by an officer at the 2-star level, by a Major General. And that inquiry is in its final stages, and I expect that the findings would come, will be submitted in a day or 2. Apart from the Army inquiry, SIT has also been constituted to inquire into the same incident, and we have been cooperating fully with the SIT, and both the Court of Inquiry and the SIT are taking the statements from the wide cross-section of the people who were involved so that we can come to a greater understanding of what has happened.